Okay, let's go over the highlights of Lesson 27, Communications and Collaboration. So actually this is very similar to what we saw in 26, basically, but they do want to talk about time shifted versus real time. Very often you'll hear this as asynchronous and synchronous communication. And then they go into pretty detailed definitions of what's blogging, chatting, audio-visual communication, such as web conferences and video conferences. And so basically, coming out of this chapter, you just want to know what each of those items are. Having worked in industry for quite a few years, I have used a lot of these technologies, so they are used, specifically webinars and video conferencing, things like that. So you want to be familiar with them. Words to know, understand multimedia messaging and short messaging, SMS, MMS. And again, look for the red text throughout the PowerPoint presentation. And all of these words are available in the StudyMate as flashcards if you want to get to know them. So here's some more. Understand that time shifting. Basically what they're getting at is, I'll run to this slide. If sometimes you have a communication where you're kind of expected delay. So when I send an email, it may be a while before somebody reads the email and then sends it back. So that's time shifted, and a lot of times you'll hear that as I'm all over the map. Asynchronous communication, and then synchronous communication is when people are there responding very quickly. Now they specifically mention that they can view texting as a synchronous or instantaneous communication, where obviously we've all been in situations where you send a text and somebody doesn't have their phone or whatever, and then it becomes kind of like email. You have to wait for them to respond whenever they've read it. One of the time-shifted communications is a blog, which is short for weblog. You should know that. And if you go to some websites, there are some people who write on a periodic basis, so whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, about a particular topic. And a lot of times they're experts on that topic. And so they can be a great way to learn things if you follow somebody's blog. Obviously it's time shifted, meaning they post the information and who knows when you will actually go and read it. Another term you need to know is netiquette, which simply refers to having good manners, and that's super important. So if you're making comments on a blog, or even when dealing with email, you should be careful how you write things, use kind and polite words. So one of the issues, which I think shows up at the end of this PowerPoint, is people can't tell in written form, your facial expressions and your intent. And so it becomes even more careful or more important that you write carefully, whether, again, be on a blog or email or any kind of these electronic communications, because you're losing all of the body cues and voice inflection cues in electronic communication that you have when it's face-to-face. So this is what I was calling synchronous communication, or real-time, occurs instantly without a noticeable delay. There's a variety of electronic methods available for real-time. That's, again, where they say text messaging, they put under real-time, but of course we've had situations where it hasn't been so real-time if somebody doesn't have their phone on them. Be aware of the difference between SMS and MMS. Basically all we're saying with MMS is that you're adding some other kind of multimedia content to the message rather than just pure text. I worked in an environment where everybody had an IM kind of client, instant messaging client. And so if I just had a real quick question for somebody, I would put it in the IM software versus sending them an email or calling them on the phone. And so that's what instant messaging is used, or can be used for, in a work environment. I won't go through the rest of these. And each time, each technology they talk about or form of communication, they're going to give you the things to do to be appropriate in using that communication. And I won't cover that right while we're on this video. Chatting is kind of like texting, except it's more real-time, if you will. A lot of times on a chatting client, you'll get some little notation on your end of it that the other person is typing. And so you wait a minute and then they finish typing and boop, you get the message and then you'll start typing. And so you're chatting back and forth typing. I actually find that one a little annoying because if I'm sitting right by a phone, I'm like, God, why am I waiting for them to type? I should just call them on the telephone. But nonetheless, it's out there being used. You should understand what it is. This has come up in all three of our videos so far. In 25, 26, 27, there's that VoIP technology. Basically, voice communications over the internet, and in a minute they're going to talk about Skype. And in a current job or company that I help out with once in a while, I will do Skype meetings with them so we can see each other, we can see their computer, and yet at the same time hear each other's voice. And it's all over the internet. I'm not using the telephone. And so that's that concept of voice over internet protocol. Another term you're going to run across in a quiz is a podcast. And so basically this is almost like a radio show that's been saved. It's I listen to these all the time, and again, you can find anything from comedy type shows to serious discussions. They tend to be short, maybe 30 minutes. Sometimes they can go up to an hour. It can be famous people or experts talking about a particular topic. I happen to find them out on iTunes all the time, and if I'm going traveling, I will download some podcasts. It's almost like an audio book, except just a much shorter, right? I don't have to listen to a whole book. I can listen to an hour presentation on a particular topic. Web conferencing is another real-time communication. I've sat through a few lectures that have been conducted in something called a webinar. A lot of times sales pitches will be conducted over a webinar. So you're sitting at the computer, and it's basically through a website. You can hear the people's voices. If they're going through a PowerPoint like this one or a presentation, you'll see it on your screen. So a very common technology. Another one I think we'll get into is video conferencing, and that's basically a lot of meeting rooms will have a video camera pointing at the table where everybody's sitting, and the other room will have a video camera pointing at that table, and so two groups of people can see each other and have a live conversation right there. An important concept, I'll go back a slide because I've made this red, and I've been subject to when people don't do this, is that if you're sitting on a video conference or probably a webinar or any place where you're on the phone, a phone conference kind of meeting, and if you're not talking, make sure that your phone is muted because all the background noise disrupts the meeting. You'll hear examples of people being on a webinar or a phone conference and they're at the airport and they're forgetting to mute the phone. So all of the noise around them is coming through and disrupting the meeting. And so make sure if you're on any of those types of communication technologies to mute your phone. If you haven't used Skype, it's a great tool. It's recently been purchased by Microsoft, and I think, I'm not positive of this, I think it's part of your Office 365 downloads. And so you can download it and you can do a video and voice communication with whoever else happens to have Skype. You just set up an account and you can call each other on Skype. You'll see your own picture down in the lower right hand corner, so you can make sure you're in the view of your web camera, and then whoever you're talking to's picture will be inside this big blue box. And you can also share your desktop if somebody has a question about on the computer. And so that's a great tool, and like I said, a company I currently work for, we do meetings over Skype. So moving on, there's the guidelines. I won't go through that right now. Another term you should be familiar with is social media, and I describe a variety of web-based platforms, application technologies that enable people to keep in touch. So obviously the largest gorilla in that space is Facebook. We've all heard of Facebook, or at least have an account there. Instagram, Twitter, social media has obviously become huge, and it's being used for marketing. It's just a big deal. So a lot of companies will now have a Facebook presence that they want to use to market their products. So these companies not only want to have advertising on radio and newspapers and TV, but they also want to have a social media presence, because that's where, especially in today's day and age, a lot of young people find them are on social media. And so you need, as a company, to have a social media presence if you want to attract that crowd. Kind of like with networking, we talked on lesson 25, one of the downfalls of having computers all connected is you end up with privacy issues. And that's one of the downfalls of social media, is you tend to share a lot of information. It may or may not be a problem, but it can be. So you have to look at your privacy settings in whatever environment you're in, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and make sure you know how you have it set. So can anybody see your post, or is it only friends or friends of friends? So you always want to look for that in whatever environment you're in, and make sure you understand what settings you have chosen. As you go through these PowerPoints slower than I'm doing during this video, make sure you understand, I don't know why it keeps moving on me, make sure you understand the advantages of electronic communication, and this top one is huge. Enable people to connect worldwide, but also as you move through here, there's some disadvantages, and I put this one in red. It can cause misconceptions regarding your correspondence. Specifically, as I mentioned, you don't see the body language, the facial expressions, the intonation of the voice. And so you're writing something in just a mild tone, if you will, and somebody reads it as being that you're being mad. And that happens all the time. Some other terms you should be aware of when we're talking about electronic communications, that's flaming. So if you say something rude, or an online verbal argument, you're flaming somebody. If you've been following the news at all, cyberbullying is a big deal, especially among middle school and high school kids, and it leads to, or can lead to, horrendous consequences. So know the term cyberbullying, flaming, and also be careful, right? The reason people do those things is they think they're anonymous, right? Or I'm on the internet, I'm behind a computer, nobody can see me, and so you say rude things. You can actually be held liable for slander, or the term libel right here, written communication. I've heard of instances, and I don't know all the details, where somebody did a review of a product and they hated the product, and the company that produced the product actually sued the people that did the review, and they won. And so it's just because you're anonymous behind a screen, you are still subject to slander and libel laws. And so you got to be careful what you say out there, not to mention that it's permanent. So basically that's it for lesson 27. But let me say, a lot of people will dismiss this electronic communications. They don't want to be involved. And I, for instance, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't have a big Facebook presence or LinkedIn or some of those other tools. But there are web blogs out there, or forums, which we haven't talked about yet, on any topic imaginable. So whether it's given examples of a motorcycle forum, or a woodworking forum, or a knitting or quilting, or whatever, where people have discussions, they post questions and other people answer questions. And so I use a lot of these tools, even though it's not social media, between following blogs of people who have interesting ideas, or going to forums to get help on things around your hobby or schoolwork or whatever. And so don't dismiss these if you haven't used them or not familiar with them. You may want to do some Google searching around topics that you find of interest. And it really is pretty cool. There's nothing you can't figure out if, once you get connected in the right group and able to post and answer questions. So that's it for lesson 27. If you have any questions, make sure you post them into the discussion board and we can talk about it there.